Welcome to This Dumb Week, a weekly live Twitter space hosted by Alex Marinos and yours truly, Dr. RollerGator. Available in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and others. Alex, welcome back. Have you had a sufficiently dumb week? And we start off today's episode with a lie because Alex is not going to be joining us, at least I don't believe. Alex, our wonderful co-host, is on vacation this week, so it's just yours truly going solo for the rest of the episode, unless he happens to join us and surprise us, which will be welcomed but not expected. And we'll see if anyone wants to come up and speak. We're going to be a little bit more liberal with the speakers today than usual, since I do not have a co-host and I don't want to necessarily be the only one doing a monologue all day, but we're going to get into this episode and see what we can do. We're going to start the show with our normal rapid-fire set of news stories before we settle into some of the bigger news stories this week. First, we're going to travel across the pond to see how the UK is faring after its recent political shakeup. And I lied. I misplaced that item. So we were going to give me one moment while I grab that item. See, we are already off to a rough start because I'm used to my wonderful, fabulous co-host here, and I'm just lying to the audience right out the gate about what's about to happen on the show. It seems that whenever I am on my own, I am not well behaved. Despite trying, I am not as well behaved as I could be. So we're going to give me just a few moments while I get this article here that I have for how the UK is doing, and I have it. Let's go.
After the UK's most prominent anti-immigration politician, Nigel Farage, said he was quitting Parliament in order to run again in a special election, the other major political parties have said they will not field candidates against him. But there is one who has said he will rise to the challenge: Count Binface. Count Binface, aka John Harvey, is a comedian who has been a perennial candidate with no expectation of winning in the UK's highest profile elections. Dressed like a character in a low-budget sci-fi film, Binface brings a terrestrial approach to politics, with a mix of offbeat, sometimes hyper-local policies, such as synchronising traffic lights on a busy street or moving a hand dryer in a pub to a more sensible location. Past rivals include former Conservative Prime Ministers Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, London Mayor Sadiq Khan, and most recently Andy Burnham, who may be the UK's next Prime Minister. Binface told the British media on Wednesday that his main appeal in this campaign would be, "I'm not Nigel Farage." He also said the lack of other candidates said more about them than it did about him.
Now, some of you who are regular political acolytes here in the United States might feel a bit of deja vu. It seems that Count Binface is somewhat of the across-the-pond version of Vermin Supreme, who is the perennial U.S. presidential candidate over here, who is most famous for donning a rubber boot as a hat as part of his attire. So some of you might feel a sense of deja vu when thinking about Count Binface, but if we elect someday Vermin Supreme and have Count Binface as the Prime Minister over in the UK, perhaps that'll be the shakeup that the world needs. And we're going to come back to the UK a little bit later, I believe, but right now we're going to head back to the United States to see how the week started off.
How, folks, there's been a significant rise in the number of explosive diarrhea cases across the country.
Okay, so it seems that this week started off pretty shitty. We're going to zoom in to Florida and see what Florida Man has been up to. It seems that Florida Man has been creating a different type of explosive situation over there.
Drop the knife now! Do it now! Come out to us!
An arson suspect now in custody after he was caught on camera wielding a flaming propane tank inside a restaurant in Florida. This happened earlier this week in Tampa. Sheriff's deputies say when they arrived, they found the building filled with smoke and flames and the man inside holding 2 knives. The man now faces several charges.
Okay, so Florida Man doing what Florida Man is wont to do. We're going to stick here for the United States again and see if anything has improved later in the week.
The number of explosive diarrhea cases in the United States continues to rise.
Okay, nope, still an extremely shitty situation and getting worse. But, you know, while people in the United States were having a shitty week, others in Australia were just having something that really sucked.
A man has survived being sucked head first out of a plane window after an engine explosion shattered the glass. Nearby passengers, including the man's wife, successfully held onto him before the Ryanair plane made an emergency landing in Greece.
All right. So, guy almost gets sucked out of an airplane in the land down under. Okay, well, that's been a heck of a whirlwind of a week so far. Let's come back to the United States and see if anything fares better.
This is an important update regarding the increase in explosive diarrhea cases in the United States.
Nope. Still gross and getting grosser. Well, we're going to continue with our rapid fire news and groan-inducing puns. Scientists have given us a grand advancement in the world. We have achieved milestones many once thought impossible.
Well, scuba diving isn't just for humans anymore. This is a cockroach fitted with a 3D printed scuba suit that will allow the insect to breathe underwater. It was created by Singapore's School of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, where they've already deployed these cyborg cockroaches after last year's earthquake in Myanmar. Davo, the Science Pro, tells us how these cyborg insects are being developed to scout disaster areas.
You know, Russell, when I first saw this story, I just glanced over it. I said, nah, this isn't this. But then I started reading about it, and this is actually really, really cool. Okay, so why would you do this to a cockroach? Okay, so they're testing these insects, and they're using the Madagascar hissing cockroach as possible tool for search and rescue. Right? For pipeline inspection and for scouting disaster zones to help people, and where you can't get conventional robots to get in. So this cockroach is wearing a miniature diving suit. And what they did was they realized without this, they put it into water or a gas pipe and it would die immediately. So then they realized, hey, with this little suit that they've put together, it can last up to 3 hours underwater. It's made up of 3 parts. There's a flexible waterproof shell that wraps around the insect's abdomen, a tiny oxygen generating chamber, not kidding, and small tubes that carry that oxygen to the breathing openings on the cockroach's thorax. So they did this because what's been happening is that they found out with disasters, sometimes they have a hard time getting into these damaged buildings, these collapsed buildings. And what they're realizing is if they can get insects to go in there and do this, they can actually see survivors, they can actually see what's happening on the inside. So they're called cyborg insects because they're wired to small electronic controllers. And when researchers tested this, they had to really do a lot of testing on this. You know, how much water can they sustain, how much CO2 gas, because a lot of times that's leaking out of some of these old pipes and stuff like that. And they did all these tests, and they found exactly what they can get away with these cockroaches. And they set up these tests in small flooded openings, in gas-like pipes with CO2 coming out. And here's the bottom line, right? Disaster zones don't arrive neat and dry. Look at what's happening in Venezuela right now. You get flooded corridors, gas-filled tunnels, sunken wreckages, and this is exactly where a small, nimble machine could reach survivors. They can attach a little camera, and I know I'm already getting texts from people that they don't like I'm showing cockroaches this morning, but that's okay because these cockroaches can be used to help save human lives. A cockroach in a diving suit does sound like a joke, but researchers hope one day these insects could work where flood disaster zones defeat everything else, where other conventional robots can't get into buildings. Yes? What do you think?
It's fascinating. It's weird.
And they can control it. They radio control this so they can get it into some of these crushed buildings.
You can control it?
Yeah, well, they send little zaps to it to kind of make it move in certain ways that they want it to and allow it to get inside these buildings. So let's think about Venezuela for a second, where there's still, the rubble is everywhere. They could send these in, and they could find a way where they could find survivors, little pockets of oxygen that maybe survivors could be in. And instead of, the dogs can't get into certain spots, and some of these larger robots can't do it either. So now we're bringing it down to the insect level.
It's fascinating. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, way to go, Singapore, making scuba diving cockroaches. Now we have to, bring in the important Ian Malcolm. Scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think about whether or not they should. We'll see what happens in the future if we wind up with a dystopian sort of waterworld situation. Will the cockroaches take over from there now with their superpowers of amphibian-like qualities? Now we're going to head back to the States to see how the states were faring at the end of the week.
The CDC has finally updated their numbers regarding the explosive diarrhea cases.
All right, so it seems like the entire week there has been a bout of explosive diarrhea that we're finally going to get into. We're going to learn about this shitty situation that's been making many sick across the country.
Developing this morning, a parasitic outbreak is spreading across nearly 20 states, and this morning, Michigan is becoming ground zero, where cases there are exploding. The National News Desk's Angela Brown joins us right now with more on this story. And Angela, a lot of folks have gotten sick across the country, we know.
Oh, yes, we do know, Jan. You're right. Michigan is becoming ground zero here. This disease is nasty, this infection. We're talking explosive watery diarrhea, cramping, and more. Michigan normally sees around 50 cases of this a year, but right now they've already blown past 500. Cases of a parasitic infection that causes explosive diarrhea are soaring across the Midwest, with the high numbers being reported in parts of Michigan and Illinois, sparking a warning from health officials. In Michigan alone, reported cases have jumped from 170 to more than 570.
So typically it's spread through produce.
And it's not just the Midwest. More cases are being reported coast to coast, including New York. The CDC has received reports of 145 cases nationwide from May 1st through June 16th. The agency is now investigating multiple states from Texas to Wisconsin, but so far, no single confirmed source is tying them together. Doctors say symptoms include watery diarrhea, cramping, fatigue. It could take up to 2 weeks to show up after exposure, meaning the true scope of the outbreak may still be hidden. Our team in Michigan spoke with health officials about what you can do now.
Washing your produce before storing it, before cutting it, before eating it. Washing your hands, especially after using the restroom. Scrubbing with warm soap and water for 20 seconds. That personal hygiene as well helps prevent the spread of these illnesses.
Well, this parasitic infection usually runs during this time of the year anyway, just not at this scale. You have Wayne County, home of Detroit, says more cases may be also tied to people getting screened more for it.
There are cases of explosive.
All right, so there you go, everyone. That has been inundating my feeds. I'm not sure if you've had the same experience. So I wanted to make sure you were all aware of normal sanitation. Wash your hands after using the bathroom so that you don't have explosive diarrhea. All right, I'm without a co-host today, so I'm going to be much more liberal with the request to speak. If you want to request to speak, go ahead and put your hand up there, and I'll probably get you on up. We got a lot of stuff to cover, though, even though I am lacking a co-host. We have plenty to get through, and we're going to move on at the moment soon to some important stuff, but we have one extra video here of some less than important news to get through before we move on.
Now to the Pentagon releasing its latest trove of files related to UFOs. The dozens of videos, images, and reports, some as recent as last year. Here's Perry Russell.
Tonight, the eerie new videos released by the Pentagon showing more of what the government calls unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs. 40 new files today, including 19 videos. One UAP described by a pilot as having flight characteristics unlike anything they had seen in their 28 years of military service. 2 encounters allegedly happening just last year. One video shows a UAP in the clouds, at times partially hidden. The camera follows it for just over 2 minutes. A second video shows what looks like a six-pointed star bobbing in the skies above the Yellow Sea in Asia. Cameras zooming in on this UAP from 2020. A partially redacted Pentagon report says it was about 12 to 15 feet tall. In 2015, the U.S. military capturing a UAP speeding past their camera. 3 new pictures released, including this one taken on board the Columbia Space Shuttle in 1996, an object apparently floating in orbit around Earth. It's still not clear what any of these objects are. Rachel, so far the Pentagon has released more than 300 UAP files under a directive by President Trump. The Pentagon says more files are coming, Rachel.
Yeah, lots of interest in this. Okay, Perry, thank you.
All right, so I think that's the 4th such UAP drop since they started releasing the files. Still, nobody knows what any of the things are except for a character named Mick West, who thinks all of it is just easily debunkable anomalies. If they're all easily debunkable anomalies, my stance on that is, why isn't it that the government is able to easily debunk them, and why do they hold on to these files for decades and have them as unexplained phenomenon? They should probably have a couple people on board who are capable of explaining it. Someone should be able to explain to me why they don't have people capable of explaining it if it's so explainable. Moving on, though. So it seems that Mitch McConnell has been missing for a couple weeks, and it is due to a possible health event that he had several weeks ago.
CNN obtained video of emergency responders taking Senator Mitch McConnell to an ambulance. The neighbor who shot the video told CNN the Capitol Police blocked the street, and other neighbors reported seeing McConnell's face. This was a month ago, and it comes nearly a month after a spokesperson for McConnell first reported that the senator has been hospitalized, but few other details have been released. Let's get to Annie Greer, who helped break this story. So talk to us about this video and how it fills in the pieces of the puzzle.
So, John, what I heard from a neighbor of McConnell's around 8:30 in the morning on June 14th, this neighbor opened their door to commotion on the street. They saw 2 ambulances, a fire truck, and Capitol Police had blocked off the entire road. So this neighbor stayed on the street to try and figure out what was going on. And about half an hour later, at around 9 o'clock in the morning, this neighbor saw a person from McConnell's home being carried on a stretcher into an ambulance, and said that they saw this person was wrapped in a blanket and that their feet was exposed, and that another neighbor standing next to them identified McConnell's face and saw that McConnell wasn't wearing an oxygen mask. So the firsthand witness that I spoke to said that they tried to ask Capitol Police what was going on, and all they were told was it was a medical emergency. They wouldn't confirm who it was for. And these new details come as we know very little about Senator McConnell's condition, why he was brought to the hospital on June 14th, and why he remains there.
Joining us right now is emergency physician, Dean of the Yale School of Public Health, Dr. Megan Ranney. It's great to see you, Dr. Ranney. Clearly, Mitch McConnell is not your patient. So having said that, the neighbor sees that he's taken out on a stretcher. There's EMS audio of emergency responders being called to the home for an unconscious person for cardiac arrest. Someone is heard saying CPR in progress. How serious is this case if this comes into your hospital?
You know, it's difficult to reconcile the video that you've just shown with the story that we'd heard earlier about there being CPR in progress. So let's start from the beginning. You get a call to EMS about someone being unconscious. We send an ambulance crew out to assess. The causes of unconsciousness are myriad, ranging from seizures, which I and others have speculated that Senator McConnell may be having based off of those episodes where he freezes on camera. Could be that. It could be that he fell and hit his head. It could be a cardiac arrest with your heart stopping. So you get the call, the ambulance, the EMS specialists go. When they arrive at the house, they assess the patient. They say, do they have a pulse? Are they breathing? Are they talking? That's the point, it sounds like, where someone reported that CPR was in progress. Now, that CPR could have been initiated by the ambulance folks, by the paramedics or medics, or it could have been initiated by someone in the house. And for viewers, knowing CPR is great, but just because you initiate CPR as an untrained professional doesn't mean someone had a heart attack. Okay, that's as much as we've known up until now, is that there was CPR in progress and the ambulance did respond. Now you have this video. The thing that struck me about the video, Kate, is that nobody seems to be in a rush. Right. If there really had been CPR in progress, if Senator McConnell had truly been in a cardiac arrest, you would expect that they would be rushing, not taking their time, loading the patient into the ambulance. So that's the big additional piece of information that I think we got today. Beyond that, it is largely speculative, and I think we're all wishing Senator McConnell the best.
Absolutely. And as you're kind of noting, Senator McConnell obviously has been in the public life for decades, and he has had a lot of health issues in the past. We know that he had polio as a child. He's been hospitalized for falling in recent years. He has had those episodes of freezing up in public that you're noting. He spent a week in the hospital this year. His office said it was for flu-like symptoms. He's 84 years old. If you have a patient with a profile like this, what questions, concerns do you have at this point?
Well, to me, one of the biggest questions is around the fact that he's been in the hospital for 3 weeks. For an average person, for you, for me, for viewers or their parents, a 3-week stay in the hospital means that you're pretty seriously ill. We try to get folks out of the hospital pretty quickly these days. Now, that may be a little bit different for Senator McConnell, given that he is a VIP, but it makes me concerned that he did have some time in critical care or has some elements of his stay that are requiring continued hospitalization rather than home care. And then on top of it, I would want to, make sure that all of his systems are working as best as they can. His mind, his heart, his lungs. As you noted, he did have polio as a child. It's one of the reasons why he's been such an active advocate appropriately for childhood vaccination, but that can have long-term effects as well. And then the biggest thing before I send him home is I want to make sure he's stable, he's not at risk of falling or having another event, and that he's properly cared for. And I would imagine that the folks in the hospital are doing that right now.
So Mitch McConnell had gone into the hospital on June 14th and hadn't been seen. And in fact, it was such a non-event that people were actually unaware for the most part that he was in the hospital until this last week. And as this last week arose, people had these raising questions about where is he? Why haven't we heard any updates on him? What is his actual health status? Has anyone seen or talked to him? And by the end of the week, the cries for answers started to evolve into some morbid theories.
Where's Mitch McConnell? I mean, the 84-year-old senator has been in the hospital for 3 weeks. Nobody knows of a condition. Nobody's heard from him. What do you know, and have you heard from him, sir?
Yeah, no, I have not heard from him. And I think it's a question that Republicans should be asking because he does represent the state of Kentucky. His constituents deserve answers where he is at. I think that the governor of Kentucky has every right to ask after 3 weeks that no one has said anything. As a Republican, I think we need to hold our own party accountable. And so the fact that we haven't heard anything really from Senator McConnell is very discouraging and concerning. And I think that for the representation of the Republican Party and to get some of the bills done that we want to get done in the Senate, it's critical that we have a senator from Kentucky voting in the Senate chamber.
Do you know that he's alive?
I don't. Just the things that I've heard and seen from some friends is that he's obviously not doing well, but don't know if he's alive or has passed away.
So that was on News Nation just on Friday. But come Friday evening, some claimed to have spoken to the senator, but no public sightings or public confirmation of his alive state had been available. That is until now. We are excited to bring to you here at This Dumb Week an exclusive breaking news segment.
For weeks, people have been asking, where's Mitch McConnell? With many speculating that he is dead and that his death has been kept from the American people. With us now to debunk some of these conspiracy theories is the immortal head of Mitch McConnell. Senator Immortal Head, can you confirm with us tonight that you are, in fact, very much alive and still the Senate Majority Leader?
Very much alive. In fact, I feel better than I have in many years. I don't have any back problems, and I've gotten my weight under control.
And the transition to your current form, has that affected your ability to carry out your duties?
No, not at all. If anything, it's streamlined things. Most of the job is voting and making phone calls, and I can still do both. My staff wheels the dome onto the floor, and I say yay or nay, and we're done. The commute is easier, and I live at the Capitol now.
In the dome?
In a climate-controlled room off of the cloakroom. The dome comes with me. It's about the size of a large fishbowl, so it's not an imposition on anyone. Fits through a standard doorway.
There are a number of illuminated tubes coiling around the base.
Oh, that's the circulation. It keeps my breathing liquids clear. When the tubes are lit blue, it's running normally. You always want to see blue.
There are questions about whether you can continue to serve indefinitely.
Now, there's no constitutional requirement for me to leave. The framers set a minimum age, but no maximum, and no minimum on physical composition. I've had counsel look into it. As long as the voters of Kentucky will have me, I'm serving, and I intend to keep running for re-election. Well, campaigning. Running is no longer a part of my repertoire.
For how long?
No, I don't see an end point.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Senator Immortal Head.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to getting back to work for the American people.
All right, so that was a This Dumb Week exclusive interview with the immortal head of Mitch McConnell. We're glad to hear that he's on the mend and that he's going to be returning to the Senate as soon as possible. However, unfortunately, it turns out suddenly this morning, Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, has passed away. From AP, Senator Lindsey Graham, a close Trump ally and foreign policy hawk, dies after brief illness. Senator Lindsey Graham, one of President Donald Trump's closest allies in Congress who traveled the globe to advocate for a more aggressive U.S. foreign policy, has died after a brief and sudden illness, his office said. He was 71. The statement posted on social media early Sunday said his family appreciates prayers at this time and asks for privacy during this incredibly difficult period. It did not provide any additional details about the circumstances surrounding the Saturday night death of the prominent South Carolina Republican, a former Air Force lawyer who served in Congress for 3 decades. Trump, who talked to Graham frequently, said he was like a member of the family. It's very tough. He said on NBC's Meet the Press that Graham had called him on Saturday night after returning from a trip to the Ukraine and sounded a little bit tired, but perfect. The president ordered the flags across the country be flown at half-staff until Saturday evening. A noted hawk, Graham was one of the most influential figures in Washington on foreign affairs, and he advised Trump on matters such as the Iran war and Russia. On Friday, Graham had announced an agreement with the Trump administration to move forward on a package of Russia sanctions. As chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, Graham had also had a central role during Trump's second term as Republicans pushed major legislation on party line votes while holding a narrow 53-47 majority in the chamber. Under South Carolina law, Republican Governor Henry McMaster will appoint a temporary replacement for Graham, who was seeking a 5th term in November. A new nominee will be selected in a special primary, which is required to be held within 6 weeks of vacancy. The winner of November's general election will start a full 6-year term in January. Graham had a close, complicated relationship with Trump. Graham, elected to the Senate in 2002 after serving in the House, long promoted a policy of robust U.S. military interventionism and strong national defense that in later years would put him at odds with the growing isolationist wing of his party. Over time, Graham became well known for his close ties with Trump, whom the senator briefly ran against for the presidential nomination in 2016. Their relationship would begin on a rough note, with Graham calling the then New York businessman unfit for office. Graham used a profanity to describe Trump after Trump made disparaging comments about Arizona Republican John McCain, Graham's best friend in the Senate and a Vietnam War veteran. McCain and Graham, along with Senator Joe Lieberman, were known as the Three Amigos and frequently traveled together to promote their foreign policy views around the globe. During a campaign rally in South Carolina, Trump read out Graham's personal cell phone number and continued to belittle him throughout the 2016 race as Graham made it clear he would not support Trump. Graham, however, shifted significantly once Trump won the White House and emerged as one of Trump's top allies, speaking with him frequently and becoming a regular presence on the golf course alongside the president, even as McCain remained a critic. In a 2018 interview with the Associated Press, Graham explained his pivot by saying McCain taught him that the country must move forward after elections, and that meant you have an obligation to help the president. McCain ran twice for the White House. And I've tried to be helpful where I could because I think he needs all the help he can get, Graham said of Trump. You can be a better critic when people understand that you're trying to help them be successful. Graham was a prominent defender of Trump during the president's 2 first-term impeachments, a reversal of Graham's role as the House prosecutor during Democratic President Bill Clinton's impeachment in 1998, when he urged senators not to make up their minds before listening to all the arguments. Both Trump and Clinton were eventually acquitted. Graham appeared to break with Trump after the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol, saying in a dramatic speech on the Senate floor that night, "Count me out, enough is enough." But the senator soon returned to Trump's side, and the two remained close during Trump's second term. Foreign policy was a focus for Graham. Graham had just been in Ukraine to meet with the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who said the senator visited his country 10 times during the years since Russia invaded in February 2022. Lindsey was a true defender of freedom and the values that make our world safer, Zelensky said. He was also one of the chief backers of Trump's war in Iran, having advocated for years for direct confrontation between Washington and Tehran. Graham continued to defend Trump this summer, even as many of fellow Republicans questioned a tentative June ceasefire agreement that they worried would send billions of dollars to Iran. Quote, "I'd rather try diplomacy than take it off the table," Graham said of Trump's memorandum of understanding with Tehran. Graham's travels made him familiar face to dozens of world's leaders. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Graham understood that the security of Israel and the United States was inseparable. Quote, "Israel has lost one of its greatest friends. America has lost a great patriot. I lost a beloved friend," Netanyahu said. Graham led both the Senate Budget and Judiciary committees. As Budget Committee chairman, Graham helped oversee a Senate procedure that allowed Republicans to pass significant policies such as last year's tax law without the threat of a Democratic filibuster. He had previously led a Senate Judiciary Committee when Republicans confirmed Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court in 2020. The senator was in line to regain that gavel if the party kept its majority after the midterm elections and had pledged to confirm as many conservative judges as possible. Graham was a key player in the Senate's effort to craft a massive immigration overhaul in 2013 as a member of a bipartisan group. The legislation passed the Senate with 68 votes but was never taken up by the House, so it did not become law. Graham's views on immigration, particularly an endorsement of a path for citizenship for people without U.S. legal status, put him at odds with some of his Republican factions. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, a Democrat who was his ally on that issue, said Graham was part of every important policy issue and an indispensable player in bipartisan negotiations. Graham often worked across the aisle, even as he remained fiercely loyal to Trump. Virginia Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat, said in a statement that personal relationships often mattered more to him than the political disagreements of the day. Senator Richard Blumenthal said Graham was over the moon with Russian sanctions deal announced Friday. Quote, "The last thing in the world I would have guessed was that he was sick or ill in any way vulnerable," Blumenthal said. Jamie Harrison, a former national and state Democratic Party chairman who unsuccessfully ran against Graham in 2020, said that even during their fiercest political battles, the two men could share a conversation, a laugh, and a mutual respect for South Carolina. Graham was unique in the Senate for his influence not only on Trump, but also with his fellow Republicans who were aware of his ability to sometimes move the president's thinking. He was also known for his sense of humor, often deployed to diffuse tensions. Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, the second-ranking Republican, said Graham will be missed for his quick wit and infectious laughter. McMaster said in a statement that Graham was irreplaceable. Former Republican President George W. Bush said Graham understood how the world works and was kind of funny man who loved our country and loved serving it. Graham often spoke out about his humble roots, growing up in the back of the South Carolina bar and helping to raise his sister Darlene after his parents died at a young age. Graham was not married and did not have children. Graham won 57% of the GOP vote in South Carolina's primary in June and was up against Democrat Annie Andrews, a pediatrician, and several minor party and independent candidates in November. His death will likely prompt a scramble to fill a rare open Senate seat. A number of Republican names began circulating as possible replacements to serve out the rest of Graham's term, including Representatives Nancy Mace and Russell Fry. The brief statement by Graham's office did not explain the circumstances of his death, which came at a time when there has been some concern about the lack of transparency about the health of some members of Congress. Representative Tom Keene was absent without explanation for months before recently returning to Congress and disclosing he had been diagnosed with depression. Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, the former longtime Republican leader, was hospitalized weeks ago for undisclosed health reasons. Now, I'm not going to claim to have been a huge fan of Lindsey Graham, so I'm not going to necessarily give any wonderful oratory or anything along those lines praising him or disparaging him. But Donald Trump was on NBC News and was asked about his relationship and response to the death this morning.
Trump, thank you for joining us, and my condolences to you.
Well, thank you. He's a tough one to lose. He was great. He was unique in every way, actually.
He was, Mr. President, and I know that we are all just absorbing this news. We are all in shock. Can you tell us, Mr. President, how you received this news and your immediate gut reaction when you heard it?
So what makes it even stranger is that I got a call last night sometime in, the early evening, maybe in the 7s, and he called and he said, we're all set for the Save America Act. He was pushing the Save America Act like crazy. He got back, said he just landed from Ukraine. I said, that's a long trip to make. He said, he sounded a little tired, but perfect, but a little bit tired. I had a right to be. And he was a worker. He was really a worker, but he sounded great, actually. But he actually said he was tired. But he wanted to pass the Save America Act. And I said, well, we're going to get it done, Lindsey. We're going to get it done. I'll see you soon. We thought maybe we might even meet today. And then that was it. And that was, very around the time. It couldn't have been much longer. It could have been his last call. I don't know exactly. But I got a message about 1 o'clock in the morning from one of the people at his office that he had passed away. I said, I just can't believe it. He was like a member of the family to me. It's very tough, actually. It's amazing.
Mr. President,
he was such an advocate. He was, if he wanted to get something, and he had a unique ability. He was able to deal with Democrats and Republicans. If I had a problem, a real problem, I wouldn't often ask. But if I had a problem with a Democrat, he could work it out. He was a great politician, actually.
President Trump, thank you for.
Now, like I said, I'm not going to give like a huge, oratory on him. He's not necessarily someone who I held in great fondness throughout the years. However, there is one moment that I do remember quite fondly. It was a quite impressive moment. It was a moment of great passion where sort of the whole country was riled up and agitated in different directions. And it was during the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. The country basically had gone absolutely insane over bizarre and random claims by now convicted felon attorney Michael Avenatti. If you don't recall the height of absurdity of that confirmation process, I'm going to play a clip of Rachel Maddow announcing Michael Avenatti's latest claims at the time, which in my mind was the height of the absurdity and the mockery of the process.
If you have not seen this already and you don't know what I'm about to say, I will tell you there's a chance that you might not want to hear this, which is me warning you that you might want to mute me or distract the kids if they're watching with you, if you don't want to hear this or if you don't want your kids to hear this. But I'm going to read it. And actually, before I even read it to you, I will tell you tonight in advance that Judge Kavanaugh has this evening denied the implication of what Mr. Avenatti spells out here. But this is what he spells out here. Quote, this is a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Quote, we are aware of significant evidence of multiple house parties in the Washington, D.C. area during the early 1980s, during which Brett Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, and others would participate in the targeting of women with alcohol/drugs in order to allow a, quote, train of men to subsequently gang rape them. There are multiple witnesses that will corroborate these facts, and each of them must be called to testify publicly. As a starting point, Senate investigators should pose the following questions to Judge Kavanaugh. Number one, did you ever target one or more women for sex or rape at a house party? Did you ever assist Mark Judge or others in doing so? Number two, did you ever attend any house party during which a woman was gang raped or used for sex by multiple men? Number three, did you ever witness a line of men outside a bedroom at any house party where you understood a woman was in the bedroom being raped or taken advantage of? Number four, did you ever participate in any sexual conduct with a woman at a house party whom you understood to be intoxicated or under the influence of drugs? Number five, did you ever communicate with Mark Judge or anyone else about your participation in a, quote, train involving an intoxicated woman? And number 6, did you ever object or attempt to prevent one or more men from participating in the rape or taking advantage of a woman at any house party? Please note that we will provide additional evidence relating to the above conduct, both to the committee and the American public, in the coming days.
Now, the claims were not just, alarming claims. This was a campaign that made people hysterical in many ways. They were parading in front of Congress in Handmaid's Tale garments and doing dramatics and having scores of women inside of the chambers with signs beholden, and there were people spreading images all over with these women behind Kavanaugh as he was giving testimony, where they had, let's say, disgusting looks on their faces and sharing them and going like, look at what he's doing to these women. It was absolutely absurd. And at one point, Lindsey Graham, during the confirmation hearings, absolutely lost his shit. And I think it was my favorite Lindsey Graham moment.
Are you aware that at 9:23 on the night of July the 9th, the day you were nominated to the Supreme Court by President Trump, Senator Schumer said, 23 minutes after your nomination, I will oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination with everything I have. I have a bipartisan, and I hope a bipartisan majority will do the same. The stakes are simply too high for anything less. Well, if you weren't aware of it, you are now. Did you meet with Senator Dianne Feinstein on August 20th?
I did meet with Senator Feinstein.
Did you know that her staff had already recommended a lawyer to Dr. Ford?
I did not know that.
Did you know that her and her staff had this allegations for over 20 days?
I did not know that at the time.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process. You came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend. Do you consider this a job interview?
The advice and consent role is like a job interview.
You consider that you've been through a job interview?
I've been through a process of advice and consent under the Constitution.
Would you say you've been through hell?
I've been through hell and then some.
This is not a job interview.
Yeah.
This is hell.
This
is going to destroy the ability of good people to come forward because of this crap. Your high school yearbook. You have interacted with professional women all your life, not one accusation. You're supposed to be Bill Cosby when you're a junior and senior in high school. And all of a sudden you got over it. It's been my understanding that if you drug women and rape them for 2 years in high school, you probably don't stop. Here's my understanding. If you lived a good life, people would recognize it, like the American Bar Association has the gold standard. His integrity is absolutely unquestioned. He is the very circumspect in his personal conduct, harbors no biases or prejudices. He's entirely ethical, is a really decent person. He is warm, friendly, unassuming. He's the nicest person. the ABA. The one thing I can tell you, you should be proud of, Ashley, you should be proud of this, that you raised a daughter who had the good character to pray for Dr. Ford. To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics. You want this seat? I hope you never get it. I hope you're on the Supreme Court. That's exactly where you should be. And I hope that the American people will see through this charade. And I wish you well, and I intend to vote for you, and I hope everybody who's fair-minded will.
You might recall that that time period was also when the progressive left was amplifying their campaigns of actually hunting down Republicans in office while they were at the going out to dinner and things like that, and cornering them and yelling shame, shame, and sort of chasing them out of the restaurants and things like that. That was where they would actually write articles in like Fox or Think Progress, where it would say, we should actually be following them down and letting these people know who are voting for this, serial rapist, that they are not welcome in our society and things like that. And I mean, it's still continuing to this day, that sort of behavior, but it was sort of at its apex there. It was at its most extreme because there were scores of people who were sort of hypnotized into believing that the entire vote was whether or not that rape was going to become legal in the United States or something like that. And there are many people to this day who now believe that there is a literal gang rapist on the Supreme Court. And that was Lindsey Graham losing his shit over that. And so that I remembered that fondly. I actually did, because that was at a time where people were like, this is absurd. His passion resonated at the moment. Now, again, I have no co-host today, so I'm going to open this up to request to speak. If you would like to request to speak, go ahead and volunteer, and I'll get you on up, and then you can discuss any of the subjects that we're talking about today. But, Lindsey Graham isn't the only Graham this week that requires a postmortem. Graham Plattner's Senate campaign died this week after Plattner was accused of being consensually challenged and coming to a woman's home drunk, forcing himself into the house, and then forcing himself inside her. For those who are unfamiliar, Graham Plattner was a candidate endorsed by Bernie Sanders to run in Maine against Susan Collins, Senator Susan Collins, hoping to oust her. Now, we've covered his campaign before on This Dumb Week back in, I believe, October. When he started, he had appeared to have been mired in numerous controversies week after week and kept publishing these public apologies on social media every week. And I was sort of enjoying those, the weekly Graham Plattner apologies. And if you aren't aware, we're going to go over some of the Graham Plattner controversy timeline just to remind you of what this candidate's been mired in. Back in October, on October 16th, 2025, the Maine oyster farmer and military veteran Graham Plattner had his now deleted Reddit comments resurfaced when he was posting between 2020 and 2021 under the name P. Hustle. Among comments, many found untoward, like regularly calling people retarded, complaining that black people don't tip, declaring himself a communist, suggesting that it would be necessary to fight back against fascists with guns in the streets. He made some other comments that gave people pause. Quote, "I still have to jerk off every time I'm in a porta-shitter. That blue water smell conditioned me." Now, I'm not 100% sure why anyone would think to put that on in writing, but that is one of the comments that resurfaced that started off some controversies. Now, he apologized for some of his insensitive comments, like calling people retarded. He said that he had PTSD when he came out of the military and had a problem with alcohol, and some of those comments were made during the dark period of his life, and his attitudes have changed, et cetera, et cetera. But then come October 21st, there was the tattoo cover-up where Plattner's campaign disclosed he had covered up one of his tattoos with a new design after it learned that it had a stark resemblance to a Nazi symbol. Plattner told Pod Save America he got the skull and cross tattoo on his chest in 2007 during his third deployment with the U.S. Marine Corps. The tattoo resembled the Totenkopf, which is German for death's head. Graham Plattner addressed tattoo resembling Nazi symbol at a Maine Town Hall event. Now, that tattoo situation was particularly hilarious because it was definitely not just a generic skull and crossbones. It was absolutely the Totenkopf that you see in the Mitchell and Webb skit "Are We the Baddies?", where they are donning the SS suits with the hat with the Totenkopf on it and looking at the skulls on it, going like, "This is not. This looks bad. This looks really, really bad." And that's the exact tattoo that Graham Plattner had. And he got covered up with some retarded looking wolf tattoo symbol. Now, the interesting thing to note was at the time that he was revealing that he got this covered up, there was no redness around his chest where he got the new tattoo. There was no salve to keep it clean. It was dried. There was nothing that indicated that it was actually a recent cover up. So my speculation is that he got it covered up a long time before because he knew that this controversy was eventually going to bubble up. But then came October 31st. His former political director, campaign manager, and national finance director resigned within 2 weeks of each other. Plattner's former political director, Rep. Geneva McDonald, resigned on October 17th over the controversial comments Plattner made on Reddit. Others said that he had lied about the tattoo and that he knew about it and that they were aware about it and they were asked to cover it up and not speak on it. And during his "I didn't know about the tattoo" tour, some text messages with ex-girlfriends came out that were mentioning that he had this tattoo, this Nazi tattoo. They described it as a Nazi tattoo, and he maintained with a straight face on outlets like MS Now that he wasn't aware. He had no idea that it was a Nazi tattoo. He wishes that the girls would have told him that's what it was. So he would have been better educated. Then comes May 30th. The Wall Street Journal published a story alleging that Plattner sent sexually explicit text messages to several women while he was married. Plattner's wife, Amy Gertner, whom he married in 2023, reportedly flagged the text messages to his former political director, Geneva McDonald, according to the Wall Street Journal. Plattner's campaign acknowledged the text messages, and Plattner released a written statement saying that he and his wife went through something hard because of me. I've learned throughout this campaign is that people don't care about gossip and headlines. They care what you're fighting for, that you're fighting for their hospitals, their paycheck, and their kids, wrote Plattner. The campaign is about ideas that will move Maine forward and past the broken politics of the past. Our opponents want politics to be empty of content and empty of actual change, and beating that is exactly what our movement is about. So he actually had his wife address the scandal in video instead of him directly. So when she was giving this emergency sort of statement, people were likening it to like a hostage situation where, send the wife out to defend your infidelity. Then June 4th, 2026, New York Times interviewed 6 women who had been romantically involved with Plattner. 3 spoke highly of him, while the other 3 described his behavior as unsettling, characterized their relationships with him as toxic and volatile, and some stated that he did not respect women. Lindsay Fifield told the Times that Plattner became rough with her and sometimes left marks when he grabbed her by the shoulders during their 2-year on-again, off-again relationship. Fifield said he never punched, hit, or injured her, and she disclosed she has worked for conservative groups. In response to the allegations, Plattner said, "Throughout this campaign, I've been open about what was a very dark period of my life where I struggled with undiagnosed PTSD, too often self-medicated with alcohol, and was a far from perfect boyfriend. I take responsibility for all of that, and I wish I had been better." In a statement to Maine's Total Coverage, quote, "Any characterization beyond that is false and I believe politically motivated. I'm not proud of who I was then, and I'm proud of the work I've done since and the movement I'm building in Maine." D.A. Merrick, before we move on, you've been requested to speak. Go ahead and comment, sir.
Oh, I was actually just wondering, because you didn't bring it up, but how about the raping burglars for dominance?
That was one of his comments. Yes, he said he hoped someone would break into his house. Well, a male would break into his house so that he could rape them, not in a gay way.
Yeah.
Any others that you remember that I missed that are particularly fun?
Well, I'm just wondering if we've seen it all yet. If after he leaves office, more things will still come out. Because this was like watching the Sideshow Bob gag of him like walking through rakes.
It was a little bit like that. Well, I'm not sure. He has ended his campaign, suspended his campaign, and so there might not be enough blood in the water for the sharks to continue to try to hunt. Perhaps it'll be dormant until he pops his head up again and decides to possibly run again or something after some rehabilitation tour. I'm not sure. I think once he's out of the spotlight, there might be a book that comes out about it, maybe with a couple extra details, some exclusives in a book, perhaps.
Well, I mean, I was so invested in the drama. I'll be sad to see it go.
Jasmine, you're a brand new speaker. I don't believe I've seen you before. Do you have any comments on this current topic or any different comment we've spoken about? Jasmine, you requested to speak. Do you have any comments? If not, I'm going to move forward. Nope, Jasmine moved back to a listener. I don't know if she's having technical difficulties. But so then, after the New York Times article with Fifield, the who was sort of in some ways smeared as just being a political operative and having politically motivated reasons for her comments. On June 9th, Plattner won the Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate to challenge incumbent Susan Collins, and Graham Plattner thanked his supporters after winning that primary. And then July 6th came, where Jenny Rassicot, who dated Plattner, told Politico and CNN that he sexually assaulted her nearly 5 years ago. Rassicot said that she had an on-again, off-again relationship with Plattner for more than 2 years before he entered her home uninvited in late 2021. She alleged that Plattner was deeply intoxicated and forced himself on her while she repeatedly told him to stop. In response to the allegation, Plattner said, "Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically false, regardless of the inaccuracy of the reporting, but mindful of the political reality it will inflict. We are taking time to reflect on the best path forward in the state I love, the people that I love, and the movement that I belong to, and the goal of defeating Susan Collins." Several Democrats, including Senator Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, withdrew their endorsements of Platter following the sexual assault allegations. Maine woman who dated Graham Plattner tells Politico CNN the Senate candidate sexually assaulted her in 2021. Then on July 7th, Fifield again alleged to the Washington Post that Plattner removed condoms without her consent during sex. Plattner's campaign denied Fifield's allegations. Plattner called out the accusation categorically false and said they came from a person with a well-documented political agenda. Then on July 8th, Plattner ends his campaign. Plattner ends his U.S. Senate campaign following sexual assault allegations. Democrats in Maine and nationally urged Plattner to withdraw so the party can move forward with another candidate.
We are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations. We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power. I intend to file my paperwork to withdraw. The process needs to assure that what comes next is reflective of the Mainers who on June 9th turned out and showed that they are desperate for a different kind of politics. It needs to be driven not from back rooms, but by the will of the people. And the decisions that come next must come from that.
Now, This guy came somewhat out of nowhere and rose to prominence pretty quickly. Of course, having Bernie Sanders' endorsement doesn't hurt. Helping a candidate rise, because Bernie Sanders is very popular. He's a very populist kind of individual, and Graham Plattner was a little bit in the same vein. Now, some people had to wonder who exactly is responsible for finding such a candidate, and well, they did find the consultants who targeted Plattner and sort of inducted him into this candidacy to try to take Susan Collins' spot.
How did you find Graham Plattner?
Well, so, I mean, we went through thousands and thousands of prospects. We, through a number of means, assessed just a huge amount of people. Then, Leanne pulled up this video of this guy with an oyster farm.
My name is Graham Plattner, and I live in Sullivan, Maine, the owner of Frenchman Bay Oyster Company.
And then she pulled up his FEC history and saw, the money he'd given to Bernie Sanders and, some other people. And that was enough information to know that we had the best prospect that we'd maybe ever seen.
At this point, you hadn't vetted Graham Plattner. You hadn't done a full scrub of who he is. How did you go about vetting him? And why did you?
We paid a nice firm a whole chunk of money and got some stuff back. Some of what you've seen on the news we got back. Other stuff we didn't.
Did the vetting process turn up the tattoo that became so controversial?
No.
The Reddit posts, did that turn up in the vetting process?
The firm sent us a thing, and it had some of the posts, but it didn't have all of them.
And what did you think about that? How did you think your way through the fact that he had posted these things on social media?
I said none of this will or should stop him from becoming a U.S. Senator.
And what was your thinking there?
Agree. I think if what the voters wanted were people who were grown in vats and had never done or said anything that they might regret their entire lives, we'd have a very different country. Part of our thesis here is that people do not want their candidates grown in vats. They want people who are real human beings, and they want people who do not look and sound like the vat-grown people who've been leading this country off a cliff for the last century. And that was Graham.
Just days after this interview, more details about Plattner's past emerged. The Journal reported that his wife, Amy, had alerted the campaign to sexually explicit texts that he had exchanged with several women earlier in their marriage. And shortly after that, the New York Times reported that some women who previously dated Plattner recalled unsettling behavior during their relationship. Plattner told the Journal in a statement that he had been far from a perfect boyfriend, but that any characterization beyond that is false. And when we followed up after these additional reports to ask Maraf whether he and his partners had sufficiently investigated Plattner, Maraf told us, "We will let the people of Maine decide."
Now, I would like to point out that, to my knowledge, that person is not related to RFK Jr. and is not attempting to do an RFK Jr. impression. That man just possesses the most vocal fry out of any human being I have ever heard. That is not due to some sort of vocal cord trauma, to my knowledge, and that is just simply the way the man talks. And well, maybe we could have done a better job. I have never heard that much vocal fry in a human being before, and I have heard a lot of vocal fry in my time. That is the apex of vocal fry. Now, one could surmise that the people who did the consulting and picking a candidate like that should have had their own inspections to see if they were possibly good enough to pick candidates that are going to be home runs. But now the left, who has sort of defended each and every single one of the controversies up until the last allegation of being consensually challenged, are starting to do their retrospectives on what they might have missed and how they might have had some clues that perhaps Graham Plattner wasn't the guy they wanted to put all their support behind. And this is opinion article from the New York Times. Lessons from the Graham Plattner disaster. Hopefully, by the time you read this, Graham Plattner will have dropped out of the Senate race in Maine. If he hasn't, he needs to, immediately. His campaign, which started with such excitement and inspired so many people in Maine, has become a shameful catastrophe. What's left, besides finding a Democrat to run in his place, is figuring out what, if anything, can be learned from this debacle. As you probably know by now, Politico published a story on Monday about a woman, Jenny Rassicott, who says that Plattner raped her. According to Rassicott, they have been romantically involved, off and on, for more than 2 years when he showed up at her house drunk and uninvited one night in 2021, let himself in, and forced himself on her. She confided her ordeal to a man she dated after Plattner, as well as to her therapist, and showed Politico text messages she sent in 2023, warning an acquaintance away from him. Her account is completely believable and completely devastating. Plattner denies Rassicott's accusations, but seems to realize that his campaign may no longer be viable. In a video posted on social media, he said, regardless of the inaccuracy of reporting, but mindful of the political reality it will inflict, we are taking time to reflect on the best path forward. But that time needs to wrap up. According to Maine law, Plattner has to drop out by next Monday for Democrats to replace him on the November ballot. The sooner this mess ends, the better. The Plattner campaign represented an electoral insurgency against the Democratic Party. Now, there are going to be furious recriminations against those who launched it. There is plenty of blame to go around. Most at fault, of course, is Plattner himself. He allegedly victimized Rassicott, and then his campaign victimized her again, putting her into a situation where she felt she had to go public. He betrayed his supporters by plunging into a campaign while knowing he had a closet full of skeletons and drawing people who believed in him into a doomed enterprise. Maine Democrats were willing to overlook Plattner's Totenkopf tattoo, his terrible Reddit posts, and his sexting with other women while he was married to, because they felt so invigorated by him and the movement he was creating. They went out on a limb for him, and they had every reason to know he was going to be sawed off. Also liable for this disaster are the progressive operatives who recruited Plattner and was so infatuated with his identity, a gruff, handsome oyster man with social democratic politics, that they failed to do their due diligence. The Wall Street Journal reported last month that Plattner's top strategist, Dan Moraff, didn't want to spring a thorough background check, which can take weeks and cost around $20,000. Quote, Moraff asked for an expedited, cheaper review to be done within days, the Journal said. Moraff, who travels the country trying to recruit left-wing working-class candidates, reportedly learned about some of Plattner's troubling Reddit posts, but decided to charge forward anyway. Quote, part of our thesis is that there's people who do not want their candidates grown in vats, he told the Journal. He's correct about the appetite for unconventional candidates, but that is no excuse for such willful sloppiness. Before blithely assuming that voters would forgive a candidate's flaws, he had a responsibility to try to find out what those flaws were. This fiasco might seem to vindicate the establishment that Plattner rallied against, but Chuck Schumer, the Senate minority leader, who wanted to stop Plattner, also partly culpable here. Schumer badly misread the Democratic electorate and tried to clear the field for his preferred candidate, Maine's 78-year-old Governor Janet Mills, leaving a vacuum that Plattner filled. As Notice reported last week, Dan Cleven, the co-founder of Maine Beer Company, had been preparing to launch a populist anti-Wall Street Senate bid last summer, but the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee tried to dissuade him. He and his campaign were left with the impression that if he ran, Democrats in Washington would make it difficult because they were holding their support for Maine Governor Janet Mills. Cleveland ended up delaying the start of his campaign, not getting in until Plattner was already caught fire. While I'm assigning blame, I shouldn't leave out myself. Last October, when stories about Plattner's tattoo and Reddit posts first broke, I went to Maine to write about him. I tried to convey what I saw, a campaign that was electrifying angry Maine voters, but I deeply regret that. Impressed by Plattner's political charisma, I wrote that he was nothing like the edgelord caricature I encountered online. If anything, he seemed to be significantly worse. One person who tried to alert Democrats was Plattner's former political director, Genevieve McDonald. She quit when the first Plattner scandals emerged and has been increasingly outspoken against him. Progressive operatives made her seem like a vindictive person eager to curry favor with Maine's political establishment. In retrospect, she looks much more like someone who took a profound professional risk to do the right thing. I can't be the only one who regrets not taking her more seriously. Now, the funniest thing about this to me is that this is every damn time. This is always how it goes. This is always how the situation unfolds, and every single time the game is played where it's just a vindictive person. If they want the candidate to succeed because they feel he's invigorating the youth, they just go with it. If he's populist, if he's progressive, they will go with it, and they will follow all these lines down. It's predictable. It's very predictable. If there's a lesson here, it might be about the importance of listening hard to the people telling you what you don't want to hear. Many Democrats, disgusted by their party's failure to contain Donald Trump, want representatives as furious as they are, and they no longer trust their leaders to tell them who is electable. That opens up space for outsider candidates who won't have had a chance a few years ago. It also makes it easier for unfit characters to escape proper vetting. Plattner offered many on the left something they're desperate for: working class aesthetics married to uncompromising lefty politics. Many progressives want to believe with a sufficiently populist message and style, they can win over voters alienated from the Democratic Party, obviating the need for ideological concessions. Plattner seemed to embody this possibility, and that made a lot of people look past a lot of red flags until it was almost too late. Now, again, I'm opening this up to request to speak because I have no co-host today, so inviting people on up to chat about some of these topics is something I'm doing pretty much at any point in time during this show. But there's a podcast called I've Had It, whose host is Jennifer Welsh, and this woman is hosting what is apparently one of the biggest and growing leftist progressive podcasts in the podcast sphere, out in the media empire. She gets millions of views all the time and has many, many prominent guests. In fact, we played her on this show about 2 weeks ago when she was interviewing Ro Khanna as they were disparaging Elon Musk. And she, just prior to Graham Plattner dropping out, wanted him to stay in and gave a passionate defense of her reasons why.
I think about Susan Collins and Graham Plattner. And I think about the biggest resistance to Graham Plattner is not what we just saw with Ted Cruz. I hear it the most from people within the Democratic Party. And Susan Collins is diabolical. Women are dead all over the country because Susan Collins was the deciding vote for Brett Kavanaugh. And in my home state of Oklahoma, women are dying. Women are dying in Georgia. If you look at the ProPublica reporting, women are dying in Texas. And Susan Collins has blood on her hands. She has a track record that makes Graham Plattner's Reddit post and tattoo look like a Boy Scout. Susan Collins is a part of the MAGA death cult where every single policy they vote for leads to death while lying to everybody and telling you they're pro-life. And so the patronizing nature from the Democratic Party to treat the voters of Maine as though they cannot deduce from their decades of experience of being a Mainer that Susan Collins is a pathological, diabolical liar, and that Graham Plattner is willing to say, look, I was fucked up. I had an online record. I got this fucked up tattoo, but here's where I am now. We have to believe these people. And it just infuriates me when the establishment treats voters in a patronizing way, because they can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, MAGA's a cult. They do whatever Fox News and Trump tells them to do. And then the Maine voters are using critical thinking. And then they're like, no, fall in line.
Now, some people might be cynical and say, well, Jennifer Welsh is just being hyperbolic. Women aren't, scores of women just aren't literally dying everywhere. But I think they have to understand what the Maine voters see in their everyday lives. And so in order to get a glimpse of what the average Maine voter is dealing with when they were trying to combat Susan Collins, who is responsible, again, according to Jennifer Welsh, for all of these women dying, we have to understand what the Maine voters dealing with in everyday lives. So I grabbed some local radio from Maine to see what the average day seems like to the Maine voter.
And now traffic and weather together on 109.9 WFRG, The Frog.
109.9 WFRG, The Frog.
Traffic is slow this morning on I-95 just south of Augusta. Northbound is backed up for about 4 miles. Another sudden mass death of women caused by Senator Susan Collins. Third this week, state police have closed the right lane while crews continue responding to the latest incident. Motorists are asked to reduce speed through the area and give first responders room to work.
Any estimate on when the bodies will be cleared?
They're hoping to have at least one lane reopened once they've finished processing the scene.
Good. And the weather?
Mostly sunny today with a high of 73, light southwest winds, excellent visibility across most of the state. We'll provide an update at the top of the hour.
That's traffic and weather together on WFRG 109.9 FM The Frog.
109.9 WFRG. The Frog.
So I think if you just listen to how totally nonchalant they are talking about all the bodies of dead women that are causing backed up traffic for the third time this week, you see that they're desensitized to this kind of violence, and really they just need a change. Susan Collins is to blame for just scores and scores of women dying. So I think Jennifer Welsh is well within her sanity to be so vitriolic when it comes to opposing Senator Collins for killing so many women. Now, Donald J. Trump, you had requested to speak, and I had said, come on up. I authorized you to come speak, but I don't see you as a speaker. If you're having some technical trouble, go ahead and request again once you maybe get it cleared up, and I'd be glad to get you on up before we move on to something else here. Are you there, sir?
There. Finally kicked over. Yeah.
All right.
Ooh, gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, well, one, I didn't realize Maine was Mad Max with beavers.
Yeah, you didn't know. Now you know. It's hard. Maine only has so many people, and in a general area, about 50% of the people are women, and now it has to be like Maine only has so many women left because of Susan Collins. So,
Oh boy. No, I was just going to comment though about it must be so much easier to be a right wing politician because like the Reddit posts he made. I mean, any military veteran right winger could just say, "Yeah, we're in the military. We joke like that." And
well, that was
sort
of that was part of the excuse at first. It was that's the humor in the culture of being in the Marines, but then it was also he had PTSD and was going through a dark period, so that his humor and some of his personality was mired in that sort of PTSD like state. So there was two sort of excuses going on, and he skated through with that. That wasn't what did him in. That was probably unpleasant to some of the more yippy progressives, the ones who like their craft beers and their IPAs and stuff, and it might have tasted bad in their mouth, but that didn't stop him. That's not what did him in, and neither was the Nazi tattoo.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. I don't even know what to say about that other than, it does feel like it doesn't, those two, I don't want to belittle them, but it does seem very kind of Me Too-ish, the accusations, if you read the text messages.
Well, sure. So here's the problem with the in my opinion, with the people who are sort of really wringing their hands over the fact that he's dropped out over what might give them echoes of Me Too. The guy has only so long for you to get to know him, and his introduction into the world of you getting to know him is him giving you a whole bunch of lies and bullshit about his life in order to get you to like him. So then if someone comes in and then gives you lies and bullshit against him, it's hard to judge whose lies and bullshit that you actually care about the most. Do you care that he's being unfairly treated because someone accused him of a horrible sexual crime that has not been adjudicated, and it hasn't been in a court of law? She's doing this in the public sphere of public opinion instead of the court of law, and therefore it's unfair because now we can't really verify that any of these things happen outside of the sparse text messages she might have said warning people. And it's fair to say that, hey, look, it's impossible to really judge whether or not he's guilty of said things. But he's trying to get elected into an office, and he's giving us a whole spiel and lying about who he is and coming up with a character and playing that character to try to get people to like him. So if you find out that the character is a bit of a fraud, it's only a question of what you think everyone else is going to think about the fraudulent nature of his character. And if too many people dislike the fraudulent nature and they're willing to come out and say a whole bunch of ugly shit about him, some of it which might be untrue, it just means that you've picked a guy who's extremely disliked and you don't even know who he is anyway. So it's best to discard him. It's not like you spend an exorbitant amount of time with the man and have, are looking back at decades of with fond nostalgia,
That is true. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of funny to watch it crash and burn, honestly.
I mean, listen, it is echoes in some ways, right, to the idea of what we just talked about with Kavanaugh and just went back through with Kavanaugh. And the difference, I would say here, is that one, we are talking about women who are giving you their rather recent experiences with the man. So we are talking about an allegation that occurred within the 2000s, or sorry, the 2020s, not the 2000s, the 2020s. We're talking about several women who are reporting similar untoward behavior. Whether or not you agree that any of this untoward behavior rose to a criminal nature or is just, something you wouldn't want your daughter dating, that is, up to you with your own judgment of what might have happened. But what we don't have is a concerted political machine and a shuckster attorney going on and getting 24 hours a day airtime on all the cable news networks, alleging that the person has done large gang rapes and drugged people 30 to 40 years ago. We don't have someone who's being required to pull out their college calendar and having every single day of their calendar inspected because one single human being who nobody else could even remember any of the claims existing, meaning like she says she went to a party. This is Ford who came out against Kavanaugh and alleged that he had raped her at a party. Nobody can confirm the party. She doesn't know whose party the house was at. The day of the week, nobody remembers going to a party. Nobody remembers being a party with her. Nobody remembers being with a party with her and Kavanaugh. Like the people that she even named by name saying, oh, they know I was there. They said, I don't remember what she's talking about. So like we have an entire story where not only was the allegation several decades old, the person themselves barely remembered it, couldn't remember any of the events, said that they only remembered it decades later after going through some sort of therapy that recovered the memory. None of the people they said could corroborate it. Nobody came up and said, oh, they told me at the time that this happened. And then none of the details about the events that she recalled seemed to match up with actual events and parties that lined up. And then you had Avenatti come in and parade a whole bunch of nonsense across the airwaves and get all of the applause on all of the news networks for going to stand up to Trump and even being thrust as an idea for running for president against Donald Trump on The View and other news stations and like CNN. And that was an apparatus where an entire fictional universe was concocted in order to put Kavanaugh inside of it and make him the main villain of. Whereas this is just people who this guy confirmed he dated who are literally saying negative shit about him. And you can believe their stories or you cannot believe their stories. Enough of it is corroborated of the events that it's now at least a real he said, she said event. Several she saids, but it's a real he said, she said event. And if you go like, I don't know who this guy is, I don't like all the things I've had to defend, I'm really not going to defend him much anymore. Maybe I'll vote for him if he's on the ballot, but I really wish he wasn't on the ballot. That seems like a reasonable thing for me to walk away with if I were a voter.
Well, that's fair enough. The only thing I remember, I remember a lot from that Kavanaugh hearings. The big one, though, is the intellectual dark web telling Kavanaugh he should resign for the good of the country. That was a weird one.
Well, I wouldn't say that was the intellectual dark web. That was just, I believe, Jordan Peterson who made that statement. And I think he got a lot of pushback at the time for that.
I thought Brett Weinstein also said that.
I know Brett pretty well. I'm not saying I remember everything Brett's ever said, but I don't think that was one of them. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But the Me Too movement also was degrees above and beyond the Plattner situation, right? I don't know if you remember the comedian Aziz Ansari, who got swept up in that Me Too fervor. His cancellation, quote unquote, occurred because of a date that a woman thought was creepy. Not like he did anything actually. If you read her account of the date, she just didn't like him. And he seemed lame.
Yeah, he got her a cab, right?
It wasn't a good date, right? And that was his oh, he sucks at dating. He's weird and awkward and stuff. And that was his cancellation, right? It wasn't like he held me down and even contemplated raping me. It was he's not suave. He's not a good dater.
If I remember correctly, we made out a bit. I wasn't into it. He called me an Uber.
And then that ruined his whole career. And it's okay, this is getting a little bit preposterous. But I mean, look, if we go back through some of the Me Too things, which, of course, I'm extremely sympathetic to the idea that was an absurd time period. I don't think the threshold is that every single woman who's ever been violated has to go pursue all of her things in court. And if she doesn't pursue all of her allegations in court, she is never allowed to tell anybody else about the person who did that to her, because it's impossible to adjudicate. I don't think that's the standard that should be upheld, because, I don't know if you've known people before who have been victimized, but, depending on the degree of victimization, a lot of people in the immediate time period do not want to go through additional issues in their mentality. They want to move past it. They want to move past it as quickly as possible, those events, and they don't pursue justice until they get it. They don't seek out the police immediately. They don't do all that in many cases, and they still should be allowed to tell people what happened to them, particularly if a person decides that they're going to run for office. That seems like a perfectly valid place for them to say a couple of years later, I didn't tell him to the cops, but hey, this guy, what all these other women are saying, particularly in this case, is my experience too, and with me, it's a little worse. That seems fair to me, even if you don't believe them. It seems like, for a woman to do, they shouldn't have to go to the police in order to be able to say that.
I mean, I'm fair with that, but I'm just saying, it's kind of more along the line of, he definitely can't deny he was with those women. He definitely can't deny. And I think the big takeaway from that story is the fact he used to sell condoms off himself, which is kind of a form of sexual assault, I would call. And that seems to be the bigger takeaway out of that one, and the provable one, especially with the second tranche of text messages when she says he has problems with some kind of consent or consensual, some kind of consent problems, but it's situational consent issues, which seems to me like he probably stuffed condoms off on her when they're having sex, which, that's kind of a massive issue.
But I mean, look, I get what you're saying in general, that it's very difficult to have the ability for anyone, let's say with a grievance, let's say you date someone and you end on bad terms. You never did anything as abhorrent as sexual assault or God forbid rape. You never did anything that bad, but now because you and the person that you've dated are, it ended badly, you really detest each other, you don't want to be around each other, hypothetically, that could always make you worried. Hey, if I were to run for office, if I were to do something, important or make a name for myself, is that person who I dated the type of person who will lie about our history just for spite? There are people who do that too. There are absolutely 100% people who will concoct entire fabricated stories about your relationship and pursue you till until they hopefully make you commit suicide. Those people do exist too. So I'm sympathetic on the opposite side. When it comes to the Me Too phenomenon specifically, though, which is about the cultural response to it, I think it's perfectly fair to take some guy who just popped up 30 minutes ago, is already really giving you a ruse about who they are, not really particularly being genuine about themselves, to then go like, this guy, I can't trust this guy. Nothing, these women might not be telling the complete truth, but it's enough of the truth where I don't trust what a word this guy says anyway. So it's best for me to not really put my support behind him. That seems like a fair conclusion that isn't Me Too hysteria, in my view.
Oh, no, yeah, they're not ruining his life or anything. He's just not being able to run for Senate. I mean, he just won't get elevated. That's fine.
I don't even think he was a real oyster farmer, though. I think that's also part of the controversy, like that was like sort of covered up, that the oyster farmer thing was something that he put his name on, but that he never actually particularly did to make a living.
Yeah, I had like one customer, I think it was his mother's restaurant.
All right. Well, let's see here. Do you have any other comments on the Me Too thing? Any additional concerns you want to expand on with that particular subject, or?
No, not really. I'm kind of just listening in as to what was going on.
Do you have any comments on Mitch McConnell's situation this week?
I just wanted to, I guess one thing, it's just, I know when we're doing civilian rotations with like the EMTs to get our like civilian time in for our renewals. I do know sometimes, now it's been weeks, and so I don't think they'd be hiding up a dead man for weeks, but sometimes when you have a dead guy and you have family in the house, you do notional CPR. So it feels like you're doing something while you wheel them out the door. And basically you ship them to the hospital, hook them up to oxygen, and get them to the hospital, and basically they'll declare them dead, especially if you can't shock them back.
Well, now, do you have any thoughts on the Lindsey Graham situation? Now, I've seen a couple people speculate, oh, hey, he was just over, pushing hard against Russia. Maybe Russia did what they've been rumored to do several times, which is poison him and induce a heart attack in him, whatnot. But then Alexander Dugin, who is said to be the brain of Putin, tweeted that it was probably Mossad in order to make Trump angrier at Iran. So you get to choose your it wasn't an accident. Was it Mossad or Putin? And I don't know if you have any.
Kind of mad at Dugin. He took my joke.
Choose your own adventure there. Well, listen, you got to get up pretty early in the morning to outdo Dugin.
Apparently, God, Putin's brain's pretty sharp.
I mean, he's already got you beat on the beard game, probably, right? How good's your beard?
My beard comes in nice, but it gets a little too scraggly when it gets long. So when I do have one, I keep it well trimmed. So he's got me beat on that. All
right, see, there you go. All right, yeah. So do you have any horse in that race? And was it Mossad, or was it was it Putin?
Yeah, it was Putin in the foyer with a candlestick.
Oh, okay. All right, that's good. That's good. Do you have any fond Lindsey Graham memories you'd like to share?
Not particularly. I mean, the guy loved war, and
he loved war. He did love
otherwise,
war a lot.
Guess, apparently, he was a good pool player. I remember he played pool once with Colbert on the Colbert Show back when it was like the pretend, what was it? What he was doing, the pretend pundit thing.
Rapport, the Colbert Rapport.
Oh, yeah, the rapport. Yes.
All right.
Other than that, well, just, I guess one time I was listening to a Trump press conference on Air Force One, and I remember I was listening, but I wasn't, watching anything. And I remember there was this highly annoying person that was actively making me pissed off, even though I wasn't really listening. And then like I finally looked over and realized it was Lindsey Graham. So maybe his voice grated on my nerves for some reason.
All right. Okay. Well, feel free to stay up on here and comment in if you want to talk about any other things we got for the rest of the show here. It's probably going to be a slightly shorter show. We usually go around 3 hours when Alex is around because the topics seem to sprawl. But just being me, I zip through things a little bit faster without anyone to bounce the topics off of. But we're going to move on a little bit here to some extra tech and traces of AI dystopia conversation. We have here from Euro News, Chat Control 1.0 passed the European Parliament through the back door. Now, we cover these because Europe often is a threat to the United States when it comes to online controls, because a lot of the things they do affect businesses, and they can put extra controls on businesses that operate inside of the United States, where the businesses then adopt policies to satisfy the EU that wind up infringing on the hypothetical rights of United States citizens as a sort of circumvention of the U.S. policy. Chat Control 1.0, a temporary derogation from e-privacy rules designed to detect online child abuse, was adopted by the European Parliament on Thursday. The regulation will remain in effect until the 3rd of April 2028, providing a substantial buffer while lawmakers negotiate an agreement on the updated framework, Chat Control 2.0. In March, MEPs rejected extending Chat Control 1.0 after subsequent talks failed. In late June, the European Parliament President Roberta Metsola reopened the file, sending it to Council, warning that the expired rules left a dangerous gap in online child protection. Council then sent back the file to Parliament at the beginning of the vacation season, where it was difficult to secure a necessary majority to dismiss it again. At the EP, a simple majority initially supported rejecting the position, with 314 MEPs voting in favor, 276 against, with 17 abstentions. There was no absolute majority to reject the amended EP position. The second reading was closed. The amended package is now being sent to Council for approval within 3 months. The previous Council's position on Chat Control 2.0 have also included minor statements about protecting privacy and end-to-end encryption, but no technical debate on how aligning those goals to chat control and end-to-end encryption is possible in practice. While social media is buzzing with criticism of both proposals, the conversation at the member state level is about the files is scarce. At the member state level, the files of both chat control proposals are normally led by representatives from the ministries of the Interior. Both proposals for the mass scanning of European private communications have ignited widespread opposition, spanning left-wing, liberal, and right-wing politicians, privacy advocates such as former MEP Patrick Breyer, cybersecurity specialists, and even human rights advocates with extensive experience in freedom of expression and information issues outside of the EU. A recently re-elected ALDE party president and German MEP, Svenja Hahn, was openly critical of the parliamentary vote in her comment in the EU Tech Loop. Quote, "It's a disgrace that the chat control instrument has passed the European Parliament. It opens the door for mass surveillance of all private communication of our European citizens, instead of a targeted fight against child sexual abuse as proposed by the Parliament." Quote, "The surveillance of private chats pushed by the EU states is a threat for our freedom and democracy. We need to continue fighting against chat control." President of the Open Dialogue Foundation, Ludmila Goldwacka, commented for EU Tech Loop that the vote on Chat Control 1.0 should be viewed in broader context of erosion of the privacy in the EU. Quote, "That vote should be trouble to anyone who cares about how democracy in the EU works, not just about privacy. It's the same approach to normalizing the erosion of privacy that we've seen before. First with financial privacy, then travelers' data, now with our communications, sweeping power justified by an urgent-sounding purpose, then quietly normalized. And the result? Financial security and cybersecurity laws are now heavily weaponized by adversaries of the EU against its own citizens and entities for transnational repression. Quote, "The real fight for encryption and privacy communications is in September over Chat Control 2.0. Between now and then, the resistance has to be strong enough that no procedural trick can carry it." Now, this article, unfortunately, doesn't specifically state the main crux of the problem, but it involves encryption technology in chat. So different chat protocols like Signal or WhatsApp certain other chat services have what they call end-to-end encryption, and that means that if you send a message, it becomes encrypted, meaning unreadable by a third party, gets sent to the person you're actually trying to send it to, and only they can see the message that you've sent, and vice versa. What the EU is attempting to do is sort of make that, let's say, illegal, or at least make sure that the government is able to read the messages whenever they want, that it is not encrypted from them. And they want those messages stored on central servers that they can sort of query at any time. So that means that effectively what they are attempting to do is force companies to make their technology less secure and less private as a guise to try to fight child pornography and other things that they say are to protect children. So if they do this, if these companies push for these encryption changes, meaning that no longer is your message going to be actually private between you and the person that you're talking to, that the government hypothetically could read it if they wanted to, it's unlikely that these programs are going to have a European Union only version where this encryption technology is lax, and then a US version where it's the same and quote secure. They're probably going to have the same technology communicating for both, because the question becomes, what happens if a citizen of the United States communicates over this technology with a citizen of the EU? Whose rules supersede? Well, it's probably going to be the EU's at that point that overrule, because the company won't get kicked out of the US, but it could get kicked out of the EU if it doesn't comply with the EU policy. So that's a concern. We'll keep following that. We don't like those encroaching rules here. At least I don't. I don't know about you, Donald J. Trump, if you're in favor of the government spying on what I'm saying to people.
Oh, no, I'm totally against all that stuff. I'm absolutely and completely in favor of Signal and Wicker Me and all those chats where you can just, it's not keeping chat logs, not keeping anything. I guess what it does prove, though, is that the investigator, Interpol, isn't as good as we think they are, because you'd think they would just be able to infiltrate those chats, with good old-fashioned police work.
Well, good old-fashioned police work. Most police work now is, done as after effect, where, you hope people hand you all of the information. You don't necessarily have to do too much sleuthing about it. You just wait for someone to actually walk in. Here's all the stuff.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's true. Gosh, oh my God, who knew the YouTubers and X people would become the actual investigators for the government?
Well, who also would have known that a Lego story would have become the biggest legal scandal of the 21st century. If you followed that story, did you follow that YouTuber Lego fiasco? Yeah. Okay, all right.
Oh, I've been following it. It's been hilarious. And I kind of see where they thought they might be able to bully him, because, when you look at that guy, he's this tall, kind of skinny guy with scraggly hair. Who would have thought he was like a guy who's used to dealing with this kind of stuff?
Well, there's a lot of attorneys who have YouTube channels now, and a lot of defense attorneys, criminal defense attorneys, and it was their Christmas, that story. Every single one of them got to make videos with their opinion on the whole scenario. And there's a channel, I'm sure you're familiar with it, CoffeeZilla, who likes to do these deep dives on internet scams. And he's taken on people like Jake Paul and their crypto scams and things like that, and he did an extensive dive into the story and got the actual Excel files where they were keeping the inventory of the Star Wars Lego sets, and was doing like cross references with what they photographs and all this stuff to see exactly what he could identify as being located where. It's been pretty interesting to see that, people get all excited over some Legos. Pretty much across the spectrum on the internet there. But speaking of of the internet and significant theft. Apple is suing OpenAI for allegedly stealing hardware secrets. Apple filed a lawsuit against OpenAI and its hardware chief on Friday for allegedly stealing the iPhone maker's trade secrets, including unreleased parts and prototypes, confidential designs, and documents about stealth products. The lawsuit accuses OpenAI chief hardware officer Tang Tan, who spent 24 years at Apple and oversaw iPhone product design, and his colleagues at the AI company, of encouraging people departing or considering leaving Apple to bring with them proprietary and unreleased technology. Tan allegedly helped coach recruits on how to evade Apple's data security protocols and directed them to bring confidential Apple parts to job interviews at OpenAI. OpenAI's nascent hardware business now rests on the shakiest of foundations, run to its core by its illegal reliance on misappropriated trade secrets, Apple says in the lawsuit, which was filed in U.S. District Court in San Jose. The company describes OpenAI as resorting to taking unlawful shortcuts while under mounting pressure to deliver its first commercial hardware product. We have no interest in other companies' trade secrets, says OpenAI spokesperson Drew Perswati. We remain focused on building innovative technology that empowers people everywhere. Tan did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Apple spokesperson Hannah Smith says the company will always defend our team's hard work and innovations, and we're taking all appropriate steps to do so. The lawsuit opens what may become the highest stakes and most dramatic battle over intellectual property theft in Silicon Valley since autonomous ride-hailing company Waymo in 2017 accused Uber of stealing hardware designs when it brought on a former Waymo engineer who had left with thousands of confidential files. Uber agreed to pay $245 million to settle the lawsuit during the middle of the trial the following year. Apple and OpenAI have been partners since 2024, when the companies announced a landmark deal to distribute ChatGPT on iPhones, MacBooks, and iPads. But the relationship has frayed in recent years, prompting Apple to rely more on Google's Gemini AI technology as the foundation for the company's in-house AI models. OpenAI and Apple are expected to more fiercely compete in the coming years in the emerging market for AI-powered consumer devices. OpenAI has hired more than 400 former Apple employees, according to the lawsuit. That includes several former Apple veterans who are leading OpenAI's development of AI-powered consumer devices. Last year, OpenAI paid $6.5 billion to acquire a startup called IO Products that was co-founded by longtime Apple executives, including Tan, Scott Cannon, Evans Hankey, and famed designer Jony Ive. IO Products and Chang Liu, the electrical engineer at OpenAI who was at Apple until January, were also named as defendants in the lawsuit. Apple's investigation into the alleged theft relies on data and messages gathering from its employees' devices. The company's caught on the alleged theft early on this year after Liu never returned his company-issued laptop and wrote to a former colleague about still having access to Apple's internal file-sharing system, according to the lawsuit. Apple says in the filing that Liu's access was enabled by a bug that's now been fixed. Liu downloaded dozens of Apple's confidential hardware-related files, including a presentation on manufacturing and testing complex circuit boards used in Apple's hardware, the lawsuit states. It adds that Liu also coached an Apple employee he was recruiting to join OpenAI on how to avoid trouble with the security team when copying confidential Apple files. Apple wrote to OpenAI in February, raising initial concerns about alleged theft, but did not receive any response. That led to further investigation and the filing of a lawsuit. Apple learned that before leaving, Tan emailed himself information about the company's suppliers. Other employees leaving for OpenAI have done the same, Apple alleges. In addition, Tan has directed job candidates still working for Apple to bring actual parts from Apple to their interviews for show and tell sessions in which he and his team at OpenAI can elicit still more Apple confidential information, the lawsuit alleges, naming batteries, logic boards, and shields as sought-after components. In another instance, Apple identified the then Apple employee screenshotting and downloading files relating to a highly confidential Apple product in the hours before an interview with Tan at OpenAI. Tan is further accused of taking an internal Apple document for managers that explains security procedures for departing workers. He and OpenAI recruiters have allegedly used the file to counsel departing Apple employees to avoid disclosing their new employer, prolong access to company systems, and avoid signing any exit documents. Unsurprisingly, Apple has uncovered a concerning recent pattern among employees who depart and then go to work for OpenAI, the lawsuit states. Departing employees have been taking actions to evade security measures, such as failing to provide 2 weeks' notice and ignoring outreach by security personnel to schedule exit processes and security reviews. Apple's accusations against OpenAI's I.O. unit include that it has approached at least 2 of iPhone maker suppliers aiming to replicate work. One company carried out a specific trade secret metal finishing technique for OpenAI after being misled into thinking that Apple had signed off on the project according to the lawsuit. OpenAI approached the other supplier, which works on batteries, with targeted questions to learn more about Apple components and further its own interests, the lawsuit adds. OpenAI had said relatively little about its hardware efforts, except for the fact that it's developing a family of AI-powered devices, while OpenAI previously planned to use the I.O. branding for its hardware products. The company has since indicated in court filings that it will choose a new name and won't ship any devices to customers, at least until April 2027. Reports indicate that OpenAI is working on an AI-powered puck that sits on a tabletop and the users can control with their voice. Apple is seeking an injunction on barring OpenAI from continuing to engage in alleged theft, also seeks monetary damages in return of the pilfered property and data. Now, I don't know what bothers me more about this story. Is it the fact that apparently Apple is filled with people who are just sort of willing to to completely screw over Apple and reveal trade secrets upon leaving, and that they just hire scores of these types of quality people who go, yeah, you pay me enough, and sure, I'll steal this proprietary data and hand it to you as a company. One, that it hires this many people, or that two, these are the same people that they hired with these types of morals who are also don't understand anything about security and are just having these conversations out in the open for other people to leak so that Apple can then file a lawsuit containing these conversations. I don't know what's worse, that nobody has any sense of security or that they have no sense of proprietary and corporate morals. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot. Well, actually, in addition to that, I'm also bothered by the fact that OpenAI doesn't have any ideas that are original except for a small little disk that you can talk to and it responds like everyone already has. Wow, really, really brilliant. You're going to put a chatbot in there, huh? What are you going to call it there, OpenAI? All right, now we're going to move on to some close to traces of AI dystopia. This is a scammers that sell exotic seeds that are AI generated. Sorry, the flowers are AI generated, but they are claiming to sell the seeds for them. So the flowers don't actually exist, but they sell seeds for them and they generate the images for these flowers using AI. Scammers are selling seeds for plants that don't exist with spectacular AI generated images of technicolor leaves that bloom in the shape of birds, butterflies, and cat heads. This type of fake seed scam predates widespread access to AI image generators, but the ability to easily create these images has made the scam more widespread, especially on big online retailers like eBay, Amazon, and Etsy, which are unable to keep up with the flood of scam plant sellers on their platform. The type of images scammers use to sell seeds online range from slightly exaggerated aesthetics to full-blown, obviously fake AI slop that looks like it was rejected from Avatar's alien jungle. One common scam seed is for a sunflower variety called teddy bear, named after its poofy, fluffy appearance. You can see what looks like in reality on the Royal Horticulture Society's website. Spectacular, yes, but that's nothing compared to the AI-generated images of gigantic purple teddy bear sunflowers on Etsy. This Etsy store, which sells a wide selection of seeds for real plants with AI-generated images, and which also randomly sells AI-generated Trump t-shirts, has mixed reviews, with some buyers saying the seeds look healthy, others complaining they never got their shipment or that they received seeds for the wrong plant. At least dozens of sellers on eBay and Amazon also offer seeds for plants they promote with clearly AI-generated images. Searching for stores for sunflower teddy bear seeds returns many such images, including identical images to the ones I found on Etsy. For some reason, AI-generated images for teddy bear sunflowers often feature a random old lady next to the gigantic flowers. On the more obviously fake end of the spectrum is basically anything sold on Etsy by Trenze. For example, this hosta plant that looks like a bunch of screaming demon shrimps. And another plant that looks like a butterfly. Another one that is very patriotic with red, white, and blue. Rose seeds and rainbow seeds are the two most common types of fake plants promoted with AI-generated images, probably because the rainbow-colored leaves and bushes are eye-catching. To me, they seem obviously laughably AI-generated, but their popularity and public-facing data for some of the online retailers indicate people have bought them thousands of times. This is reflected not only in user reviews who claim the sellers are scammers, but also by number of units sold, which sometimes shows on eBay. In 2024, I wrote a story about Google surveying users AI-generated images of mushrooms, which could potentially have dangerous consequences for users who are using Google to decide whether a mushroom is safe to eat. A moderator of the R-Mycology Reddit community told me at the time that at some point scams for exotic rose seeds were so common that Google image search results for that term turned up AI-generated or photoshopped images of fake flowers almost exclusively. Seeds for these clearly fake colorful roses sold 37,271 times on eBay before eBay banned the seller. Seeds for these gigantic fake teddy bear sunflowers sold 1,301 times, AI-generated grandma not included. Quote, these listings have remained unchanged for years. It is a profitable business to sell fake seeds since there is no cost involved beyond an envelope and postage, a plastic bag, and a few hours to collect random seeds, the R-Mycology moderator told me at the time. Quote, the selling price may be low, but enough people buy them to make it add up. The fake seed scam is not limited to the dominant online retailer either. On Reddit and Facebook, plant enthusiasts warn each other about the shady sites dedicated to selling seeds that offer the same fake plants. In addition to confusing search engines about what real plants look like, the risk to people ordering seeds for a fake plant is that they're not going to get what they want and waste their money. The seeds might sprout an entirely different plant than the one advertised or not sprout at all. The bigger problem is that if people don't realize they're planting seeds for an entirely different plant than the one they ordered, they could unknowingly introduce invasive species to the environment. Last year, 3 states issued warnings against planting seeds they received in the mail as part of a widespread scam popularized around 2020, in which people were sent unsolicited packets of mystery seeds that sellers then used to write bogus online reviews for unrelated items. Quote, trust is foundational to eBay's marketplace, and we have policies and controls in place to help detect and prevent fraudulent activity in our marketplace, including misleading AI-generated images that violate our listing practices policy, an eBay spokesperson told me in an email. We work diligently to prevent and remove non-compliant listings through seller compliance audits, block filter algorithms, AI-supported monitoring by in-house specialists, and through close partnerships with regulators. We continue to invest in tools and technologies, and we can encourage users to report suspicious activity, and where we identify behavior that violates our policies, we take appropriate action. Etsy and Amazon did not respond to request for comment. So that's the top article on our Traces of AI Dystopia segment here, and we don't have that much left to go, so I'm going to try to finish out the articles here I have for Traces of AI Dystopia, because some of them are a little funny here. Quote, this is from Wired here. Quote, tell him he's a piece of shit. Meta's new AI unit is a total mess. Someone interrupted a live stream, employee-only presentation at Meta earlier this week with an expletive-filled outburst about, quote, being the company's bitch, according to a recording heard by Wired. The individual then asked the people leading the call to write a specific Meta AI executive and, quote, tell him he's a piece of shit. One of the presenters covered their face with their hands, according to a witness. The speaker could not be reached for comment, and the meeting's 2 leaders moved on with their technical talk after asking everybody to mute, though employees commented on the stream about the spicy start. The incident, which took place on a call open to thousands of employees, reflects growing frustration inside the company's applied AI team, which was formed in March to support the work of AI researchers at Meta Superintelligence Labs. 3 current employees tell Wired there is widespread dissatisfaction with how Meta assembled the unit of about 6,500 engineers and product managers, and the drudge work they allege has been assigned to improve AI models. Each spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak to the media. Quote, it's literally the gulag, one of the employees claims. You have zero purpose in life. All of a sudden, you barely interact with anyone. You just have these tasks every week. Another employee describes some of the tasks, generating puzzles to test how reliably AI models from Meta and other companies can solve them. As easy compared to the software development work they had been doing previously. But the new projects feel menial, and almost all employees seem unhappy, they say. Quote, most people find the work soul-crushing, a third employee says. Meta declined to comment for this story. Applied AI isn't the only unit where tensions are boiling over and contributing to what workers describe as low record morale. The company's AI-focused restructuring, which includes 10% of the company or 8,000 employees being let go last month, has generated extra work and stress throughout several divisions, including data center engineering and Instagram, several current and former employees tell Wired. Across the company, more than 1,600 employees have signed a petition demanding that Meta stop a recently launched initiative to monitor U.S. employees' clicks and keystrokes to generate AI training data. The company has scaled back the program slightly, allowing employees to pause data collection for up to 30 minutes and request specific exemptions. During a meeting this week, open to all employees at Instagram, Meta Chief Product Officer Chris Cox addressed the difficult and brutal environment created by the insanity of this company in the past few months, according to a recording heard by Wired. Cox applauded Instagram employees for launching features and serving around 2 billion users amid what he compared to running a marathon in the middle of a hailstorm and then, like, your teammate gets replaced and then we're recording you. Quote, "It's like what the fuck," he said, drawing laughs before repeating himself. It's like what the fuck. Cox said he needed to reckon with how he and other leaders would, quote, "get in touch with the company again," and, quote, "not be over earnest about the power of AI. It's neither a god, nor is it the devil," he said, "and it's nowhere near as good as you think it is, and it's nowhere near as bad as you think it is. It changes every week, and it doesn't know what day of the week it is." In an internal memo on Friday seen by Wired, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg acknowledged that recent organizational changes had caused distress across Meta. "Given the complexity of these changes, we've made mistakes, and we will almost certainly make more," he wrote. "As we navigate this period, I'm also focused on providing as much stability going forward as possible." Zuckerberg reiterated a vow to not carry out additional mass layoffs this year. He introduced a plan to limit the number of employees per manager, which on some teams, such as Applied AI, had deliberately ballooned to a ratio of 50-1. Budgets for team events would increase, he said. A large hackathon planned for next month could also help bring the company together. By the end of the year, employees in many locations would have assigned desks again, the CEO wrote. Zuckerberg's memo also addressed the allegedly dismal situation at Applied AI directly, referring to the unit by its acronym. He suggested the team was a waypoint, not a destination. Quote, "Work like AII is critical to advancing our models, and it lets very talented people contribute to those efforts while we create other roles they can contribute around Meta over the coming months as well. Engineers selected for the unit have no choice but to join or leave the company, an unusual requirement for highly valued technical employees in Silicon Valley. That's led some members of Applied AI to describe themselves as draftees. The organization has grown in batches since early April. Quote, "It's crazy to watch people experience the shock of it as each wave comes in," an early member of Applied AI says. "Some employees are being asked to finish 2 tasks per week. These involve generating complex software coding problems to help AI scientists better train and evaluate the performance of the latest frontier models. Some of the work is meant to help develop AI agents and generate software or other outputs." One worker describes the assignment as mechanical and not creative, and certainly not using their full skill set and knowledge. They feel they were hired to develop social media apps for billions of people, but now find themselves assembling data for hundreds of AI scientists to feed computer chips. Meta released pioneering open-weight AI models 3 years ago, but has had mixed results with subsequent releases. Applied AI is among several expansive initiatives Zuckerberg has spun up in hopes that the company can better compete in the growing market for AI services. Zuckerberg noted in his memo that, unlike some of the other AI labs, automating work was not Meta's primary focus. Quote, "The products we'll build will range from much more personalized Instagram and Facebook experiences and glasses that help you throughout the day to better tools for small businesses to thrive and create jobs, and personal superintelligence agents that understand your goals and work 24/7 on your behalf to help you in ways you want," he wrote. To get there, he said, Meta's North Star is to be the best place for the most talented people in the world to make an impact. So, I am very pleased to report that employees of Meta are miserable, and that someday the company may no longer be. Perhaps it will dissolve, break into 1,000 pieces, and blow away in the wind. Donald J. Trump, are there any Meta products that you actively use on a day-to-day basis?
Not that I am aware of. I don't even think I have any machinery in my farm that actually is younger than 2008. So I don't even have like modern electronics in most of my stuff.
Wow. Okay. So the only social media platform you're currently using is X, the everything app. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. Yeah. The only thing I use is X, and I have a YouTube account where I watch YouTube videos. But that's about it. And Rumble.
Were you aware that This Dumb Week is broadcasting live to YouTube right now? That we are live streaming to YouTube, and that hypothetically the chat boxes go on the live stream as well.
Do you actually pay attention to the chat box, or?
I do not. If we get a whole lot of flow on there, I might start. But I'm a one-man production machine right here, so I gotta pay attention to everything that goes on. So
I guess I'll eventually have to log on there and I'll just have to accuse you of being a Mossad agent occasionally on the chat.
Well, listen. I definitely do not speak dreidel, so. I can't read it. I can't speak it. So I would be a very poor, or I guess maybe a very good Mossad agent, since I wouldn't be able to give away any secrets because I wouldn't be able to read any of them. I don't know if they write using Hebrew. I have no idea.
Who knows anymore?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, you already know the first rule of spycraft from the previous story, which is, always use a cutout.
Yes.
Never request the act yourself.
Well, while Meta is attempting to make the most super intelligent advanced AIs possible, their intermediate journey is fraught with some trouble here and there. From Ars Technica, hackers duped Meta AI support chatbot to steal celebrity Instagram accounts. Meta's AI support chatbot proved unusually helpful to hackers looking to steal and resell notable Instagram accounts, the hackers simply asking the bot to change the account's associated email addresses while using VPN to mask their true locations. Videos featuring the shocking easily exploit have been circulating among Telegram groups for hackers and security researchers, according to 404 Media. The exploit allows hackers to take over and flip valuable Instagram accounts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars on the gray market before Meta implemented an emergency patch on May 29th. The Barack Obama White House account and the Chief Master Sergeant of Space Forces account also posted pro-Iranian images and messages while they were temporarily compromised. Attackers simply had to use a VPN to approximately match their location to the target Instagram account's region, begin a password reset process, then ask Meta's AI support chatbot to change the email address associated with the account, according to 404 Media. It's a very straightforward prompt injection attack. Neowin reported having the exploit as being active in the wild for months, going back as far as February of this year, with hackers compromising thousands of accounts, but the exploit seems to have gained more public notice in recent days with the compromise of high-profile accounts. Prominent researchers such as Jane Munchin Wong have recently reported that their accounts were hacked. On May 31st, the synonymous open-source intelligence researcher ZachXBT posted on X about how the Meta AI support is garbage and has lots of access perms which allow you to reset passwords to any user without two-factor authentication and did not verify who you are. At the same time, the researcher Dark Web Informer described as the same exploit on X while noting it had been recently patched. Both ZachXBT and Dark Web Informer also confirmed how hackers had targeted and resold particularly valuable Instagram accounts, including the short handles Hey and Joe, with a combined gray market valuation estimated above $1 million, according to the cybersec guru. Such accounts can be valuable even if hackers hold them for just a few days because of the clout, resell, and brand impersonation, the security blog reported. The cybersec guru also described the exploit as representing the classic confused deputy problem from cybersecurity, in which a program with elevated permissions is tricked into misusing those permissions on behalf of a less privileged third party. But in this case, the deputy was a large language model. With a probabilistic response model, you can nudge with words instead of a deterministic program with hard-coded conditionals you need to bypass with code. It's worth keeping in mind that users had simple security solutions available even with the Meta AI support chatbot being exploited. The hackers reported their exploit failing against any accounts that had enabled multi-factor authentication, including the least robust form of multi-factor that Instagram offers, in the form of one-time codes sent through SMS, according to Krebs on Security. But the exploit still highlights the broader risk of tech companies and other organizations rushing to deploy AI agents with elevated permissions that allow them to modify, create, or delete critical data. Meta had launched its AI support assistant in March 2026 with the promise that it could provide reliable 24/7 support for nearly any support issue at the time. The minimum architecture required to do this more safely, according to the cybersec guru, would include out-of-band verification before any account modification, rate limiting on AI-initiated reset flows keyed through account risk signals, action logging with anomaly detection for unusual AI-driven account modifications, and a hard deterministic gate. But of course, Meta would not do any of that right off the bat, which I guess brings me some more Schadenfreude. And with that, I am going to round out the show. Do you have any additional comments, Donald J. Trump?
I have. They're saying the Department of War, one of their central commands, didn't have two-factor authentication on their Instagram account. Did I hear that correctly?
I guess not. I guess not. Whoops.
Oh my God.
I mean, listen.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe Whiskey Pete created that account and handed it off and didn't necessarily set it up for a full authentication. I don't know. Whiskey Pete's really high on the AI supply, but he doesn't seem to be well informed on cybersecurity and AI itself. So I don't know what his OPSEC is.
Honestly, you know what? There's probably some weirdo SOP from back in the day that is still circulating, like a zombie SOP that states that someone can't make a two-factor authentication because of some cell phone association with the account that can't happen or something. It's probably something that was instituted in like 2008 and it just has never been updated, would be my guess.
Well, I guess as long as you can't arrange any drone strikes over the Instagram account, that'll, the damage might be minimal, right? You're not doing any trade secrets over there. All right.
But if you could throw up some AI stuff, that would be funny.
Yeah. Well, that's been this dumb week. I have been co-hostless today, but I think I did an okay job. It might be a slightly shorter episode than it typically is, but that's okay. I'm going to come back hopefully next week with a jam-packed show. I don't know if our lovely co-host Alexandros Marinos will make a return for that episode, but we will see. He is enjoying his vacation in the lovely Greece, but I'm not going to bug him too much to come back early if he doesn't want to just yet. I actually don't even know what the time difference is over there. It might be sleepy sleep time for him, and I'd have to start the show earlier if I wanted to catch him before sleepy sleep time. But with that, I hope everyone has a wonderfully dumb week, and I will see you next time.